Welcome to
Bean Stuff.
Today we are joined by Emily and Mike McIntyre, and we're excited. This is our first outing as a podcast.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And so we're out in Portland at the moment, where they have their business here. Mm-hmm. And you want to give a little introduction to those listening to who Emily and Mike are?
And I know about Dominion, Catalyst Coffee. What do you guys want to say?
Well, when did we first meet you, Paul? It was a long time ago.
Yeah, that's a good question.
I want to say
Paul
20...
and I met,
you met at that coffee
4
science
years
seminar,
ago, 4.5
right?
years ago.
Coffee chemistry. That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. You
Joseph
sat next to me and we talked about organic acids and so forth. You know.
Wow.
It's a great beginning to any relationship.
Walked off into the sunset.
That's right. I don't remember I remember it was snowing. I don't remember the sunset.
Well, shortly thereafter, you went to Ethiopia together.
That's right. Yeah, that was a highlight. I never thought I'd go to Ethiopia, but you offered that, and for some reason my boss said yes. And before I knew it, I was having shots and all sorts of. And there I was in Ethiopia. It's like, wow, this is a dream come true.
You know,
Wow.
what's funny is I actually never thought I'd go to Ethiopia either.
Is that right?
Yeah. Go.
Because Emily, you've been to Ethiopia too.
Yeah, we've lived over there.
Yes.
And I've been back and forth.
First question we had was, how did you guys get involved with Ethiopian Coffee?
Yeah. Well, I think every coffee professional and every coffee enthusiast has a love story with coffee. And for most of us who get into coffee, a lot of, or maybe not most of us, but a lot of us, that sort of epiphany moment is with an Ethiopian coffee. I would probably say most usually with a natural processed Ethiopian coffee. Crazy fruit and beautiful floral character. You know, a lot of people kind of say, wow, I did not realize coffee could do this, or coffee could have this type of experience. So I think for every coffee professional, there's sort of a sacred place in your heart for Ethiopia. How we actually got into Ethiopia, I was working for a small company that was based in Kansas City, Missouri. I get a call randomly from this guy, and he said, hey, you don't know me, but I've been hearing a lot about you. So we had a conversation, and we sat down and we talked about what we both did and what we were both passionate about. That night, he invited me to Ethiopia, told Emily that I was going to go to Ethiopia.
I remember that.
What
And
was
I
your response?
Like, cool. Fine by me. And really, fast forward 3 or 4 months, and he was in Ethiopia. And it was so cool the way this built, because, we started Catalyst as a way to work together in coffee. Both of us had developed separate expertise, separate skill sets, and we wanted a way to bring those together. Possibly work with the same people, but at least, it's the dream of having some independence and the ability to kind of set your own schedule. One of our core values as a family is keeping our daughter, Era, with us as much as possible.
Is she here today?
She is. She's right next to us. Michael went to Ethiopia with Mike and was really deeply impacted, as one tends to be. If one is even remotely spiritual or deep thinking person when one goes to Ethiopia. And things
Paul
built
was
from
there,
there.
actually, yeah.
Yeah. Did you go on that first trip with him?
Yeah, you were there.
Was that the
Was
first
that the
trip?
first? That wasn't the first
That was
trip.
the first one.
trip, yeah.
I didn't realize that.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. I thought you came the next year. Well,
So did I.
there we go. Paul's been there from the very beginning.
Wow. I had no
Wow.
idea.
And at the time, we also worked with clients and people in Colombia and Peru and Nicaragua and Cameroon. And I worked with the Alliance for Coffee Excellence, and Caravan was one of my clients at that time.
That's right.
With quite a number of people. But over the years, especially once Michael began to spend more time working into the role of sourcing and quality director with Dominion Trading, investing in the lives and training of people like Zellys, who I know that we'll get to talking about, and other people in Ethiopia. And then especially once we began to work with Ethiopians as clients. And then we moved our entire family there.
Oh, that's right.
And basically it's just been, I guess, falling down this glorious Ethiopian rabbit hole. And about 2 years ago, we made the decision to work only in Ethiopian coffee.
Now you mentioned I'm not very good with names, as Mike would attest to when I was in Ethiopian. They would make large jokes and say names that were made up, I think. Just to make me think, I don't know them, do I? No, you don't actually.
Oh my gosh, that's
But I
funny.
do remember two names. One is Zilly
Yeah.
and one is Aaron.
Well, Zellys and Aaron have worked with our client, Dominion Trading, for many years. Do you want to tell a little bit about your relationship
Aaron
with
has
Zellys?
been the driver. I can't express enough how hard he works to help facilitate. When we're with groups, when we're with larger groups, coffee buyers, he's right there. Helping us set up and tear down cuppings.
Wow.
You
He's
should have seen
cupping
this
with
amazing
us
setup he
sometimes.
came up with us for a cupping in Galolcha recently, where there was one single piece of an electrical wire that
Wow.
was strung about 50 feet and connected to another through a tangle of wires and eventually reached a generator. And this is what fueled our hot water tower
Wow.
for the cupping that we held in this remote village of Harar. And that was Aaron's baby. He managed to jury rig that. It was amazing.
Zilly,
Uh-huh.
what's his role then? Because I assumed he seems more involved with Dominion,
Yes,
am I right?
he's a Dominion
And what's that
employee.
mean?
He is
What's his
Dominion's
role?
relationships manager
Okay.
and quality processing oversight. So in the off season, which is like right now in Ethiopia, Zellys travels to washing station sites, talks with farmers, learns what their needs, sets the stage for the upcoming harvest, talks about processing. When the season kicks in, Zellys oversees making sure that all the processes that we have stipulated are adhered to. He's the one who personally pulls samples from every single bag of coffee at every single stage.
How many bags would that be, approximately?
Thousands.
Thousands, exactly. Yeah, that's a lot of
Well,
coffee.
and how many farms is he traveling? Is it quite? I mean, it sounds
All
like
over
quite a few.
Ethiopia.
And these farms, I mean, taking a lot to get there.
Yeah.
Sounds very isolated. What are these farms like? If this is a coffee farm,
Oh, they are lush and
is it electricity?
well-kept
Oh, they
and
are.
beautiful.
Wow.
Yeah,
No
there's
electricity,
there's a
no.
little bit of electricity at some.
Yeah, I mean, there would be
Some
some
farms,
at
yeah.
various points, but
So
not
they do more
throughout.
the natural dry process more than wet, or what
Yeah.
does
Well,
it
they
look
have
like?
to collect the cherries, and
Yes.
we thought it was hard for us to get to those farms, but these farmers are carrying their cherries down the mountain to
Wow.
Minnetucha
Yes.
to be collected.
But for the most part, it's all natural processed coffee. I'm very intrigued about washed Harar coffees, especially the coffees that we work with these producers. I think they would be very fascinating.
What's typical in Harar that you say you'd be very fascinated with washed?
Well, there's not an abundance of water, nor are there the central, as Michael was saying, there's not a central washing station structure like in much else in other parts of Ethiopia, like
Or
for
even-
example, Yirgacheffe.
Or
Yes.
even, there are dry mills. They're called hulling stations for the most part.
So it's pretty much natural processed coffee out of Harar.
Yeah, I remember, I don't know where we were, you'll remember where it was, but I remember us stopping by the
Yeah.
side of the road, going
Yeah.
like just across, like it wasn't a fence, but we went up into this very small little area, and this guy was so excited about his coffee, and it was, I don't know, half a hectare, I don't know what it
Yeah,
was,
yeah.
but he had plants there that he was growing, he was so excited, he had this little plantation, little plantation, and here was his coffee, and I don't know, how much coffee was he then taking up the road to the mill?
Yeah, that was in Kochera district.
Okay.
It was a producer that delivers cherries to Rekokoba washing station.
Yeah. How much coffee would he process and take for that little? How much are we talking? Like
Yeah.
4 buckets?
Yeah.
More?
The equivalent
But
of
he
maybe
had quite a lot of cherries, quite a few trees on that little farm. I think we determined he produces around 5 bags
Wow. Okay.
of coffee cherries.
Those workers there, what's their life like? They sound very happy. They sound very pleased that you were there. I'm thinking the workers who come, what do they do when there's no coffee? What's their life like?
Yeah, that's a great.
Frankly,
A
that's
great
something we're
illustration.
still learning. We have been welcomed in, but we visit during the harvest.
Right.
So there are times when we are not around to
And
observe.
how long's the harvest? I'm just
in Harar specifically?
Yeah, where you were there, yes.
It starts as early as early November sometimes, and goes as late January sometimes.
Okay. So then you're talking about the rest of the year. What do they
Well,
do?
these people are farmers.
Yeah, these
Right.
So
in this
they have
particular
other
area.
crops.
Right.
In this particular area, and this is kind of what distinguishes many Harar coffee farmers from other areas of Ethiopia, from other producers in other areas. They are generationally agronomists. You know, they have usually a small farm in this particular district will be about 5 hectares. Now, a large farm is usually going to be around 12 hectares.
Yeah.
And we're actually talking of coffee. On top of coffee, they have teff, onions, wheat, beans. Yeah. So these are really agriculturalists who have an entire farm ecology to manage. So they're looking at the life of their farm really in 20 years at a time.
It's really special to get to work with these people because their perspective is much more long-term and centered on nurturing and growing their holdings. And they are thinking of their sons, the way that they're going to be dividing the land among their sons. I'd love to say sons and daughters, but it's it's not the way that things get divided. And so versus other parts of Ethiopia where it's much less that way, you see fences, beautiful fences. You see cows that have gleaming sides. You can't see their ribs. You see well-fed animals, in other words. And it's really cool to work with that type of producer. Every part of Ethiopia is different and has different practices, and some are more nomadic than others. Some are more deeply rooted to the land. And so for us, it's constantly a learning process, too, as we see these cultural differences.
And if they're farming coffee, then doing those other ones as well through the year, who do they sell that to? They sell it locally, or whatever locally is?
Yeah.
Or that may be just my mindset. They've got to sell it to someone.
Well, they have to sell it. It's a cash crop, but they also use it for themselves.
Right.
And then, like for example, a lot of places, not in Harar, but they'll use the byproducts. Like for example, the NSET, they'll use that to feed their livestock. So it's kind of a cycle on the farm.
Yeah, in Harar, NSET is mostly used for feeding cattle. In other parts of Ethiopia, particularly Getio zone, NSET is a very mineral-rich food source for people.
In Sidama, we had it ground up and fermented for breakfast, the root, the wanza.
Wow.
NSET.
I was going to say, one of the things I'm curious about is looking from here into Ethiopia, we have this perspective of coffee. What is in Ethiopia? What is their perspective of Ethiopian coffee as it goes out to the world?
Great question. Well, they are rightfully so proud of their coffee. They are so proud of their national product. We try to bring coffees from other cultures in so that they can taste like Guatemalan coffee versus Ethiopian coffee because, like most producing countries, it's very difficult to get.
What's their response to that?
They don't like it.
They don't like it.
They prefer Ethiopian coffee.
Yeah.
It depends,
Generally,
though.
it depends on the coffee person.
Depends on the coffee. It's funny, yeah.
Our friend Zellys really enjoys tasting other cultures.
A lot of times Colombian coffee is well received. Kenyan coffees.
Kenyan coffee, they're kind of
well
like,
received.
well, that's really good.
One time we had this Guatemalan coffee,
it's
which
so
was
fun
a good,
to do blind cupping.
which is a good, which is good Guatemalan coffee. It was a good coffee, and we also had some Peru. And it was funny. On the cupping table, everybody was like, I don't like this coffee.
This tastes like low-grown
tastes
coffee.
like Babeka. And Babeka.
It's like, very low altitude, low-density beans.
But it is interesting because you have this veritable cornucopia of coffee type and flavor profiles in Ethiopia. So you do actually have some regions of Ethiopia which are a little bit more like cereal grain in flavor profile.
Less desirable on the cupping table.
Yeah,
but still, there's a
what-
home for that coffee.
Certainly not what we tend to classify as like that characteristic Ethiopian.
But another piece of the puzzle with Ethiopian coffee is how deeply a part of the Ethiopian culture it is. It could be argued even more than those of us here in the United States, where we drink a cup of coffee almost every morning. Usually there's coffee in boardrooms and kitchens and camping. It's a huge part of our cultural rituals. But in Ethiopia, it could be argued even more so. The Buna ritual, the coffee ritual, I know, Paul, you've partaken. It's a beautiful series of movements that takes place. It's very olfactory. Frankincense is usually burned in front of the Buna preparer. There's coffee that's toasted in a skillet over coals, and then it's ground, usually often with a stick, and then multiple infusions of water.
It's a good
Speaking
sound.
of coffee.
It's a good sound.
Wow.
And then this is often enjoyed several times a day.
Wow.
It's actually a little hard to get work done there because it seems like every time we get steam up, we're stopping for Buna.
Yeah.
Which is great.
Which is great. So there are variations of the theme throughout Ethiopia. Every different region of Ethiopia has little different ways of practicing Buna ceremony. There's often popcorn that's popped and sugared. I love the sugared popcorn. Oh, it's so good. Often it's popped in this, like, the same skillet, you know. And then there are spiritual aspects of this. In different parts of Ethiopia, the smoke is an offering to various local deities. There's so much more research to be done on that. But the truth is that the Ethiopian coffee ceremony and the way that coffee is consumed throughout Ethiopia is such a huge part of the national identity that as an export product, it's also one of the largest commodities that's exported. So it's a huge piece of Ethiopian pride and psyche. We are so lucky to be a part of it in Ethiopia.
So Buna, understand that, and when being there, I remember thinking, wow, that's a special thing all in itself. I mean, we'd stop even along the roadside at a cafe, and they'd be doing the ceremony there. You get to your hotel, there'd be another ceremony there. It's like, wow. Is that how typical Ethiopians, they wake up in the morning, in Addis, for instance, Zellys, whoever, Aaron, they wake up. How would they typically have their coffee? Would they go to a coffee shop? Would they make it themselves?
Both. Well, generally the women do the Buna ceremonies. We're not yet talking about a gender equal culture here, but it's also very special. There's so much pride in being a good Buna maker. It's really cool to see. So Zellys' wife Tigist is one of the most remarkable Buna makers that we've ever seen. Her hospitality is glowing. They have a lovely little apartment, and Tigist has her own set of Buna implements. And now she and Zellys also make coffee the American way. We've left various pour over devices, and Zellys takes a lot of pride in making coffee now too. It's really fun. We always bring Kalita filters when we come because they're impossible to find in Ethiopia. Believe us, we traveled the entire city of Addis going from grocery store to grocery store looking for filters.
I found one package of filters that could be used, and that was the only set of filters that I.
And there was no indication as to when they would be replaced. Some foreign oddity.
The cone might work well there, so you don't have to replace it.
Yeah.
Don't do that.
No, it's good thinking. Yeah. So it's a big part of the. So actually a friend of ours, Girma, who we spent about 4 months with, he was our daily driver. So he actually would pick us up in the mornings and take us where we needed to go. And then he'd hang out, he'd play with Era or read. He was an inveterate self-educator. And then he would drive us wherever we needed to go. He's an awesome friend. Anyway, he took a lot of pride in making Buna for his entire neighborhood. And when we shared with him some coffee samples from the laboratory and gave him a brewing device and a hand grinder, he started to make red coffee, as he called it. His friends would say, "What are you making, tea?" And he'd say, "Taste it." And soon the entire neighborhood was hooked on this new style of light roasted, slightly less intense red coffee. So really, Ethiopian coffee culture is shifting and changing, and it's so cool to be a part of watching this happen.
It was awesome too, because Girma would join us for.
Oh man, that guy has a palate on him.
Yeah. We always love just inviting people to participate in what we're doing. it's so fun, you know.
And it's also part of, it's really special because in Ethiopia it's pretty difficult to get into the position of a professional cupper. You have to have certain diplomas, certain check marks. So it's really...
To gain a certificate from CLU,
the Central Liquoring Unit, which is the quality control
you actually
arm
have
of
to
the
have
Coffee and Tea Authority.
you actually have to have a college diploma or college certificate. So
Wow.
That necessarily
Definitely,
excludes a lot of people. So it's been really special to get to invite people to come cup with us and to learn from them too, how they approach the coffee, their own coffee, the Ethiopian coffee or coffee. You know, everybody has their own opinion in Ethiopia about which coffee's best. Zellys' mother-in-law, whenever we drive through Alita Wando, it's so funny. Zelly is a coffee professional who personally oversees hundreds of samples a year of the highest grade coffee to exit Ethiopia. I mean, this guy has access to the best of the best every year in Ethiopia. And at the end of the season, you know, he could do what he wants with those samples, really. You know, once everything's, we just keep reference samples, and otherwise it's like there's a lot of coffee there. But every time we drive through this town of Alita Wando, he stops, and in this particular roadside shop, he bargains for local market coffee from Alita Wando for his mother-in-law. And, you know, grouches about how much it costs. And he'll bring kilos of coffee in these clear plastic bags to his mother-in-law in Addis, and she sorts through it, hand cleans it, and resells it at an upcharge to her friends. It's Alita Wando coffee.
Whoa. What? I remember also.
We tease him unmercilessly about that. And yet, every time we go through Alita Wando, stop, I need to stop here.
Take all this amazing coffee that you have.
But nobody wants that. They want the coffee that they want, which is from Alita Wando.
Yeah.
Wow.
You know, it's really cool. Everyone's got very strong personal preferences.
It's just,
so we see this
like
on the cupping
anywhere,
table.
just like anywhere in the world. You know, everybody has a coffee preference.
Yeah,
So.
yeah. Actually, cupping, it's interesting. I hadn't thought of it before, but Buna, the ceremony of coffee there in Ethiopia, it's got a similarity to cupping. I don't know if probably cupping might come from that in some ways.
Oh, with the open cups.
Yeah,
Yeah,
just
I
the way
can
it's
see
done and the ceremony that goes with it and the thought that goes with it. I remember also driving, we did a lot of driving in Ethiopia.
Yeah, you'd have to.
And you stop somewhere, and I was surprised. Almost every place we went, they had a lever espresso machine.
Yes.
What coffee would they use, and why did they have lever machines?
It's a great point that goes through Ethiopian history. 1930 to 1934, the Italians occupied Ethiopia.
I noticed you used the word occupied.
Kicked the Italians' asses and knocked them out of Ethiopia.
Wow.
This is still a matter of national pride, although I will say that I think there's a remarkable and wonderful cultural interchange still between Italy and Ethiopia. In fact, one of our favorite restaurants in Ethiopia is an Italian-Ethiopian restaurant. So yeah, that's a heritage there. The espresso preparation is directly handed
And will
down.
they use only Ethiopian coffee in their espresso machines? Or
Yeah.
That's,
Wow.
Again, yeah.
For example, in the village of Daye, that's a propane run lever espresso machine, right?
Yeah.
And they roast and grind coffee in advance and keep it in a tin, and then pack the pucks with a spoon.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and
Wow.
steam the milk and create macchiatos. It's very common to get a style of a macchiato almost anywhere in Ethiopia,
Wow.
or espresso. Espresso, and then there's something called a spritz. That's what's called a chai, which is kind of a spiced tea, a little bit like a non-milky chai from India, and then it's got a shot of espresso in. The beverages in Ethiopia, not just coffee, are really, really rich and
the
exciting.
Juices.
Oh, fresh juices.
Yes.
You remember those?
Yes,
You
I
remember
do.
the strawberry juices, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Well, I guess as we're wrapping up, what's
Yes, well, I told you this would be hard to keep short.
what's maybe it's hard to take one, but what's a takeaway that you guys have from Ethiopia that people should know or that you think is worthwhile mentioning?
Well, it is a little cliched, but I think we are one and we are not the same. We get to carry each other. I mean, wouldn't you say? That's our biggest takeaway as human beings. We can't overlook cultural differences. They're part of what make us special, and they're part of how we honor each other by acknowledging and respecting cultural tradition. And then we also have a cultural exchange, which is part of how we grow as humans and become more than ourselves. Michael and I and Era and our friends who've come with us have been incredibly lucky to immerse ourselves as much as possible in Ethiopian culture. We've made a number of sacrifices to do that, and those sacrifices are seen and recognized by our Ethiopian friends who have granted us trust as we've given them trust. Constantly, the boundaries are broken down and we get bigger. And we have to get more and more practical about what that means, because we're in business and we're trying to help ourselves and other people do better business. I think that's the takeaway.
Yeah.
We're all the same. And we're very different,
Yeah.
and that's really amazing.
I have a question. I'm not sure the takeaway. No, it's not a takeaway. It may be diverging a secret, actually. Where we are right now in Mount Tabor, I see a whole lot of Ethiopian coffee on that side over there.
Oh, yeah.
Which means you've got a lot of work ahead of you, I know, to sample all that. Can you give us any tidbits if you think this one's going to be a good year for this particular coffee in Ethiopia?
Gosh.
Yeah.
Well, I'll let
absolutely.
Michael take that. Although I have my opinion.
I'll get your opinion too, please.
We as an industry, I mean, so much is happening right now. You know, you have the Coffee Varieties book that was compiled by Getty Beckley and Tim Hill. You have the Q putting out the Coffee Atlas. There is a lot, and you have the liberated coffee movement in Ethiopia.
Heck, you've got a new prime minister who looks like he's going to do amazing work in Ethiopia.
And who has promised to study coffee. He said, "I don't know coffee."
Good on
He's
him.
had a lot of experience in other industries, but he said, "I don't know coffee. I will study coffee, and I will work with professionals to find solutions."
We're so excited about
That's
this.
fantastic.
So there is a lot of energy, a lot of excitement, and a lot of inspiration happening right now. And you know, it's amazing because our friend's name, Zellys, Zellys is his full Ethiopian name, Zellys Girma. His name means forever. And I think that's a beautiful representation of Ethiopia.
I agree. There's an endless hope
Yeah.
that you see everywhere in Ethiopia. Unbelievable. Hope in the face of any obstacles. Trust that God will provide, and my neighbor will be there for me when I need him.
And we see that in every aspect of life. We can learn a lot from our friends in Ethiopia.
So the coffee.
So the coffees, you know, tying that into coffee, you see that spirit in different districts, you know, like in Andaracha, whose coffee molded because we couldn't get it out of the farm and washing station in time before the opposition struck and the road to Jimma was closed.
It was single road.
But the producers are like,
They're
their
planning for
response
next
is-
year.
Their response is, it's okay. Next year will be better, God willing.
So we're committed to making it a better year any way we can. With that.
In Rekokoba 2017, the rains did not come in that small microclimate. And that it happened in other microclimates throughout Gedio Zone as well. Coffee cherries were not ripening on the trees. Rekokoba washing station was not able to produce coffee this year. And you know, we're talking about a washing station that produced 4 containers worth of coffee last year. And
whose coffee some of our customers competed in national competitions with in Europe and in the United States.
some amazing coffees, some of the best coffees out of Ethiopia. And this year, just by no fault of anybody's, it's impossible to produce. And everybody's attitude and spirit is like, it's okay. God willing, next year will be better. In terms of what is happening, I think as a buildup of excitement and spirit in the industry, we have not even begun to scratch the surface in discovering what the possibilities are.
But the possibilities already are amazing.
Yes.
Can you talk a little about our
Yeah.
excitements this year with
Absolutely.
coffees?
This year, several communities that we work in have been working very hard for the past few years. Several communities were able to achieve NOP, JAS, organic certifications, and even a couple of small communities have been able to achieve cafe practices, which is a very rigorous set of protocols to follow. Coffee and farmer equity is what it stands for. A very amazing program that offers a lot of opportunities.
And these coffees are just blowing us away on the cupping table. And actually, we have a number of our roasters who've submitted them for various awards. So we're really excited. This year, we think is going to be huge for these producing communities to see. I think a lot of awards are going to come through honoring their hard work. And the coffees are brilliant on the cupping table, just astonishing us.
In terms of what coffees are standout, coffees that are standout this year, it's hard to choose some favorites, but the Andaracha that we had earlier that unfortunately didn't make it out of the farm. Yeah, that coffee was beautiful. I think that Sidama coffees, particularly coffees out of, actually, there are classifications Sidama A and Sidama B. Sidama B, which makes up like Yergalam, Dale, Hunkute, those are probably my favorite coffees in general. Ledawando, and we're working with another farmer who we're just starting to establish some cool projects. We don't have his coffee this year, but we're planning next year.
We should next year.
But other than that, this is probably the best year in general of Ethiopian coffees that I've ever experienced. And really, I thought last year was that. And this year, even with some of those disappointments, this year is really topping last year's quality. Coffees out of the Bensa district are stunning. Specifically, the Bensa and Chire districts. Coffee out of West Arsi, which has historically been classified as a Sidama type coffee. But it's really, in the coming years, we will see West Arsi distinguished as its own growing zone, and no longer tied to the Sidama name.
Wow.
I really believe that, and that's non-Sabo coffees. We've had non-Sabo coffees that we've been working with, particular producer who was the manager of Shantagolba Cooperative in the Bensa district, but he's from West Arsi, and he had an opportunity to get funding to finance his own washing station. And we've been able to work with him. He's no stranger to quality. Shantagolba is an absolutely wonderful cooperative. And he was the quality manager originally. So coffees, I think this year, the best coffees are from Sidama.
There you go.
Sidama.
Oh, my.
Yeah, Sidama and West Arsi.
Sidama and West Arsi.
Yeah.
You heard it from the horse's mouth here.
It's not to take anything away from the stunning coffees that can be found outside of Sidama, but this year in particular, wow.
Wow.
Wow. Yeah.
And to top last year, even. Wow.
To top last year.
It's just getting better.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. And if people want to kind of catch up on what you guys are doing, what are the best places to plug in? Or Catalyst is a good place to catch what you guys are doing. And
catalystcoffeeconsulting.com and Instagram at catalyst.coffee.
Instagram is a good place. We're really active usually during harvest seasons and then need to be more active at other times. We do a number of public cuppings every year. Every summer we do a kind of cupping tour, and we are always at the SCA trade events. We also write occasionally for publications like Daily Coffee News about what we work on, and we have a blog at catalystcoffeeconsulting.com that is occasionally updated with extremely long-winded and awesome articles.
I agree. I mean, they're a little long, but they are extremely good.
Thank you.
Extremely good.
That would be the wonderful, detailed brain of my partner in crime here.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today and
Thank
just
you.
giving
Thank
us
you.
an awesome amount of just insight into Ethiopian coffee, and we really appreciate it.
Yeah.
Well, we sure appreciate
always
the
learning.
opportunity.
I would also add, I just appreciate your friendship too, you, Michael and Emily, and Era over there. She won't be able to hear me probably, but it's been good to know you and continue to know you.
Likewise, I
That's
completely
that's
agree.
for sure.